Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Unfair Advantage podcast. Today, we're joined by a guy who knows what it's like to build from the ground up and sometimes below it. Blair Witkowski is the founder of Garage Door SEO Experts, where he helps gutter and garage door installers grow their businesses from a single truck to full-fledged teams across multiple locations. But Blair's real edge isn't just about how he knows SEO, it's that he's been there. He knows what it's like to miss payroll, juggle bills, and to sit in the quietness of a business on the brink. And because of that, he's built a different kind of agency, one that doesn't walk away when things get tough. Whether you're a one-man shop trying to keep alive or an operator ready to grow, Blair meets you where you are and helps you climb. He's also the mind behind Garage Door Galaxy, which is one of the largest directories of garage door installers in the US, which is a game changer for those in the trade. Blair, welcome on.
Hey, thanks. And that was a very kind intro. I'll have to show that to my wife.
So I obviously have the intro on your agency. You guys and your agency, you're niche down, focused on just garage door companies, correct?
Yeah, garage and gutters. I am two separate niches, two separate agencies. So I, like a lot of guys that you probably meet, I had a large generalist agency. We still have that, and that runs kind of, I don't want to say it runs itself, but I learned over the years that, man, contractors are awesome to deal with because they just care about one thing, and that's the phone ringing, and they don't fonts and the colors and, hey, that Facebook post wasn't funny, all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for the most part, they don't, unless you get into like as an example, it's like one of the clients that was part of my acquisition of my agency. They have like a luxury outdoor hardscaping company. And so like they care about everything, but their clientele are people who like are having like not just like they don't do just lawn maintenance packages where you're just having your lawn mowed. Like you have to do lawn maintenance, tree trimming, like there's like a package you get. And so it's one of those things like it's luxury people, right? So you would expect them to be kind of particular, I'd say, about like the design and all that stuff. But you're right. For the most part, like garage door companies, they're like, it's a garage door. It's going to go up. It's going to go down. And like, there's not much more you have to do to that on there. So,
And it's a broad brush comment, but you know exactly. There's a few guys out there who are like, man,
yeah.
I don't like how that reel turned out. I was like, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have these two niche agencies. How long ago did you have like your more broad agency?
I started, I know we all have these like similar stories. I think when we get
Yeah.
into this where, I found myself at one point, and we can get into this later. I'm like, I was building furniture and selling it on Etsy. I had a wood shop in my garage and supporting my family, which is amazing. God is amazing with that kind of stuff. And I was fortunately like bitter about it at the time because I was working 7 days a week all the time. And I realized with Etsy that, they take a lot in fees. And this is going back several years already. And then other people in other parts of the country would copy what you were building and sell it cheaper. I mean, supply, demand, all that kind of stuff. And I realized, oh, hey, I need my own website. And I built my own website for myself a couple times over the years. I was in the car business before this, build those type of websites. But I found myself, I had that aha moment where I'm like, wait, there's more money in actually doing this website stuff for other people than doing it for myself. And I kind of stumbled upon SEO accidentally in the car business where, back in the good old days, you could put keywords on any Craigslist list ad and like all of them, all of them would show up and stuff. And so I was there one day and I'm like, I just need to do this for other people. And you start doing some favors for people. And one day you've got a handful of clients and you're rolling.
Yeah,
and that's how my generalist agency started.
Yeah. Well, and back then you didn't have all these big like online car platforms, CarMax, Carvana, all that stuff. So
it was very different, very different.
Now they own the SEO market for the most part when it comes to buying cars online. So it's even difficult for your large dealerships here in whatever metro area that to be able to rank online because you have all these big companies that now are holding it up there. So you kind of began there, and then I'm always interested in this switch. Like, what got you to then niche down to like the garage door and niche for the garage doors and gutters as well?
Yeah. So I had been following, we all know Josh Nelson from Figure Agency. Kind of was on the outside looking for a number of years before I committed. And we built up a large agency. We have on the general side, over 100 SEO clients.
Okay.
There's a dumpster fire sometimes, like you're doing all these different things for all these different people. And then, so the niching down and really, I never wanted to do that. I thought it was like narrow minded. I'm like, no, I want all this business. I want to do this. And there's just so much wisdom in that. And I found myself having several gutter guys and several garage door guys. And I'm like, you know what? They're the easiest of all my clients to deal with. they are pretty much the easiest and most of them pay on time. So why don't,
Hmm.
let's go that direction. And then I
Yeah.
identify with the contract a lot, having somewhat a little bit of a blue collar background where I
Yeah.
think, kind of about our unfair advantage. I worked in a high end repair shop for BMW and Porsche as a service writer. I know about buying tools on the Snap-on truck in Cornwall when
Yep.
it comes around. I
Oh yeah.
worked in a dealership, built furniture, worked in a cabinet shop at different points. And so I was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. And then when I joined Seven Figure Agency, I was like, got to pick a niche. And I'm like, well, we got 12 of these guys already. Why don't we just get rolling
Yeah.
with this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. I posted this actually in the free open group for Josh Nelson the other day, and it was like one of the things I didn't even think about with niching down is I just sold my agency, but like we were as far niche as like home service companies and contractors, which in Josh's group they're like that's not a niche, like you got to go more narrow than that. But with that, like part of the acquisition was there's a non-compete clause in there, and that I can't do an agency, but for contractors and homes service companies.
Yeah.
And so the advantage there is like if in a year or two I wanted to open an agency, like great, but I just can't do it for contractors home service. So kind of same thing, like that's the benefit of getting super niche is like if you are just working with garage door companies and you exit, well, you just have to have like you could negotiate down to having your non-compete clause like I'm only not going to do a marketing agency for garage door companies. But then at that point, you've already built the machine and exited. So why not do it again for a different niche or a different industry at that point? So that's one thing that isn't talked about much with like the niching down, but it's something that I began to realize recently that that's
So
super
that's my goal.
important
Like,
there.
like literally that's my goal for being a seven figure. I came in thinking something else. And this past year was my first intensive in March, February. And like literally after like, you have that first day where like they kind of ask you to join and then you get into the real intensive.
Hmm.
And I talking to guys and they all sold for these exits. I literally was like, wait a minute, that's what I want to do. I don't want to run.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, so that's why we end up doing two agencies and we're trying to build them differently. One is more hands off, little white label, more heavily reliant on AI and
Hmm.
massive cold outreach. And then the garage is a little bit more traditional to what Josh teaches with doing webinars and stuff like that. And it's like, I was like, okay, I'm going to race against myself. But even that's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of dive into like really what we're kind of go through like the unfair advantage. So like I mentioned the intro, like missing payroll, bills piling up, like the whole 9 yards there. Been there and like it's not fun to be in. I'm sure a lot of your clients in the garage door industry have been there as well. It really doesn't matter the industry, but most people have been there at one time on there. And so with that, I imagine that whole aspect was while running your agency, like you were missing payroll, bills piling up, all that stuff.
Actually, it even goes back further. I have been either 100% self-employed for basically full commission almost my entire adult life.
Okay.
Very, very, very small pockets in there, but several times through, I think I'm a big about taking responsibility. And I love David Goggins' accountability mirror.
Hmm.
And all of my trouble I've had in my life, for the most part, it's been my fault. Either I run my mouth, I'm a wise guy, like I just even remember, I'll leave out the names to not hurt people's feelings. But like 2001, 2002, I was in banking and the guy that hired me was just a jerk. And I punished him for that. Like I literally was a terrible employee. I didn't like how he treated other people. So I was never nice to him. I was always confrontational. I was much younger then and dumb,
Hmm.
so dumb. And I look back, and I'm like, man, that guy deserves my apology. During like 2002, when rates were very, very volatile and there was no technology like there is today, when you would lock someone's mortgage rate, you'd submit it on the computer on like a DOS system
Hmm.
and you get a text to your pager that the bank gave you that was locked in. Long story short, I locked someone in on rate. I'm in Hilton Head, South Carolina. It was a giant house and the rates really fluctuated. And the day of closing, when the paperwork gets there, his rate is 2% higher than what we locked him in at. Well, the swing in basis points, for anyone who understands how this works, the swing on the back end to give him that rate was almost $14,000. Here where comes being a jerk come back to get you is that manager, that dude did not want to fight for me or help me with the bank. And I had to eat that dollar amount in negative commissions. And at that point, I wasn't like some rock star loan officer or anything. I could never dig myself out of the hole. And he knew that basically by doing that, I was going to be fired the next month because they don't allow you to run a negative commission on your draw and stuff like that. So that was Thanksgiving
Mm-hmm.
because I, was always running lean financially at that point, young family. I found myself one year, the week of Thanksgiving, literally with like $2 in the bank, no money. Christmas around the corner. I mean, it was desperate. And this is why, I know we talk a lot about faith and on, I've heard your other
Mm-hmm.
guests and stuff, but God's
Yeah.
funny and so amazing because one day during that time, I literally had no job, didn't know what I was going to do. I went out to the mailbox and someone had put a check in my mailbox for literally the exact amount of money that it would take me to pay my mortgage and get through the month and get through Thanksgiving, almost to the dollar. No note, no anything. And I have my suspicion who it was even to this day, and he's never admitted it. But I know like three people got together, but they didn't, and like, God, it's just the sovereignty of that, like so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no job. And so I went to work for a friend of mine in a cabinet shop, painting cabinets. So it was a custom wood shop, which is very funny because that comes back later on in life to really help you out. So there I am around Christmas time working in a cold wood shop in cabinets. And I've never really done something like that. And I was like, wow, don't be nasty to people or a wise ass. Cause
Yeah.
that was just like, that's like the
Yeah.
karma, not teaching a lesson there. And then, working with this guy who's a contractor, not only was I in a bad strait, I didn't realize that he was extending himself just to give me a job through like the holidays and stuff like that, which was amazing. And I saw what it's like really, really running a small business payroll. So he's a cabinet contractor. Contractors aren't paying him. Like, that was very, very insightful. I was able to get back into banking rather quickly and everything there and everything fine. But again, down the road to my own stupidity, I found myself a few times just in the car business. My career led me through the car industry, used cars and then new cars. I was a finance manager at a Chrysler dealership and I
Mm-hmm.
worked for a crazy person. And he had this phrase called high roller bipolar. And if that's not a great way to describe my finances as an adult, I've been
Yeah.
up with tons of money and I've been low, low, low. And like that song, like I married up and my wife married way, way down. I mean, if that song wasn't written for my wife, I have no idea what was. And all these times, several times, literally financially rock bottom, like just can't make it happen. And I had to hustle and do stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how a lot of clients come to me. Like they've been with two or three other agencies. It's not worked out. They've poured all this money into marketing and you're like their last hope. And in our industry, a lot of times we're taught not to help those guys. They don't have the money. They're not going to be long term, but there's a diamond in a rough. A lot of times, if you put out and really help somebody, they are loyal. So I've many times started someone on, hey, I'll do the first month for free or $500, but if I get you XYZ, it's going to be $2,500 a month, or it's going to be this. And that's
Yeah.
been able to land a lot of clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it's one of those things like you don't even realize that like we were doing a handoff call with my acquisition to the new agency, and like on this call, the client, they're like a dumpster rental client, and they're like basically saying how like they're so busy they're gonna have to buy a new truck or an additional truck, buy additional dumpsters and everything. And I'm like, and this was like a husband wife, and I'm like sitting there and I'm like, holy shit, I didn't realize like how much of an impact we were making on them that then now they're having to, and thankfully they're going to a great home and everything like that with the marketing. But you're right, like there's a lot of people who like they just need that right marketing approach to then be able to take them from level one to 3 or 4. Now there's also people who maybe marketing was actually working for them in the past, but their sales process was crap, their follow-up was like those different types of things that then got them to where they're at because they didn't have proper sales things in place and everything like that, which you also see as well. So obviously then having the agency, like you have ups and downs in the agency life. You'll have months where you have clients signing up like crazy. You'll have months where you have clients leaving like crazy, like all of that stuff. So now with the monthly recurring revenue, which is a lot of what Josh teaches in his group and
Right.
everything like that,
It's the greatest thing ever.
is right. It is. And so it's like, I'm always like, I hate all these monthly things, but I'm like, my entire business is based off monthly recurring revenue. So how can I hate always having these monthly recurring costs? But so when it comes to like where you're at, like where you see kind of things at now, has, the monthly recurring revenue aspect, has that helped with things of like missing payroll, bills piling up, everything like that? Cause you'll
Yeah,
kind of
I've been very
forecast
fortunate.
out.
So I started my agency at my kitchen table and I
Hmm.
start with clients. And as far as my agency life it's been rock solid. I've been able to take all these hard knocks and experiences prior to this. And we're talking, always being transparent on this kind of stuff. Like it's not fun being broke. in that situation. And I really, really was like, I'm not doing that again. Like I
Hmm.
could, trail back and see all my mistakes. And, I'm not a huge Dave Ramsey fan anymore and stuff. But there's also a Crown Financial, kind of like I mean, at one point, I'll tell you a crazy story. At one point was, we were in foreclosure in our house. This is a crazy story. And a friend of mine who was a pastor at church, not even the church that we go to, bought my house and rented it back to me. And he had very stringent rules for this. So that's how bad like things were crumbling one time after the banking and stuff, like trying to get a grip on everything. And his deal was like, yeah, no credit cards. You can't spend anything over $500 without talking to me. And he's like, look, man, I'm going on a limb here. Like I can't afford to pay your mortgage payment or this rent. Like I'm a pastor,
Hmm.
like no one knows this story. I mean, I've talked about it a little bit and we don't mention names or anything, but like how amazing is that? And that is set me completely 180 to being financially solid for basically the rest of my adulthood, where it's like, no, you always have to have money under the bed, like the bank,
Hmm.
you always got to have savings. You always have to have emergency funds. You have to be able to, have company bills ahead. And that's kind of how we run. Cause I'm super paranoid. I've been in a position where people couldn't pay me my payroll. Like I've not gotten paid. I would never want to do that to someone else. So that's how we run the agency, where like, no, it's got to be solid. So thankfully the agency has been rock solid, but I've taken all those lessons. And that's why I'll take on some like hard knock cases where, we call them cases with people. Like we've
Hmm.
definitely become gutter guys and garage
Yeah.
guys and stuff who are like, yeah, like you're it. You're it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it's crazy. Like I'm like very adamant, like making sure that I'm not past due on anything. Even like with Josh's group and everything like that. Technically, I was running some of my stuff for that through my agency. I was going through an acquisition. My renewal's coming up for them, so I emailed them and I'm like, hey, I can figure it out if I need to, but until I go through this acquisition and create new accounts and everything, can we just pause it for like 4 days? And like that's the most. And I'm like proactive, like reaching out, like, can I do this just for a couple of days because of, business acquisition going through all that stuff. And I wanted it to be on the talent fees books and all that stuff for proper account and all those things. But it's like if you have too many clients who are late on their bills, then that affects you paying your people. And so the last thing I want to be is late on my bills, which then affects somebody else paying their people. So it's like I'll do anything and everything I can to make sure that our bills are paid so it doesn't affect other people and their cash flow and everything like
That's a
that.
very good point. I think what's lost, when you talked about the MRR, monthly recurring revenue, I think what's lost sometimes is that these clients are people, families, employees, and we
Mhm.
get kind of jaded sometimes. Like, you get those emails like someone's recurring payment didn't go through. So we bill through PayPal and Stripe, you get those messages and you're like fuming, but you don't know what's going on the other end. I mean, you brought it when you talked about the dumpster company. I mean, we talk about this in our company all the time. We are the people that help families pay for their wedding, pay for college, pay for school. And some of our clients, we're their longest employee in a way because they can't manage stuff. They got office managers coming and going, and you're having the same conversation 9 times because this is a new office manager, and you're like doing SEO. I mean, I've had SEO clients for almost 12 and 13 years. Like my oldest client, I think, is 13 years old. Still, she'll never see this, but boy, I wish I could get her off that $500 a month SEO package. Where's the
Yeah.
inflation?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's one of those things like you like learn those things, and it's like one of the things we're thinking about doing is like putting into our agreement for talent fees where like your rate goes up 2% every year or something like that. That way, going into it, like my rate's going to increase, but it's not going to be this huge increase. It's just kind of like with the rate of inflation, right? So we've thought about doing that because of the people that you have in on those grandfather rates, and you increase your rates every year. So then you have people who are on these new rates that come in the door, and you got these people who are like your first couple clients that come in at this super reduced rate. So it's always a tough balance to have at everything between
No
all of
one, no
that.
one, no one complains. I mean, how many emails do we get this year about Netflix going up, this going up? Like, it's just, all this stuff goes up. It is expected. So it's, I think as agency owners, we leave a lot of money on the table by not raising people's rates.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, because
And
you're
when they're
and I got
happy, when you're successful with them and they're happy and things are going, that's when to do it.
yeah yeah.
Be proactive.
Well, and like I've been in it before where like you're almost afraid to because you're like, what if I lose, these clients type thing? Then like I lose the revenue and all that stuff, depending on where you're at in your growth mode of the agency. Like sometimes you can and can't afford to do that. Versus companies like Netflix, they're like they have a CFO that runs the numbers and it's like, yeah, we increased the rate by this. Last two times we did it, we lost X percentage of people. And then we saw a net increase of Y after that. So we'll be fine. Right. But you can do that when you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of customers, right? When you have an agency, sometimes it's difficult, but you're right. Like we as agency owners need to get better about like increasing the prices and the rates year over year, whatever that may be, because then you hit a point where you're giving them so much in terms of deliverables and everything like that, that then the price doesn't keep up with that. And then you're actually losing money on those clients, and it's costs you more to keep them than it is for them to just for you to just to let them go at that
It was
point.
an eye
So
opener. You just said like, when I realized, when I really sat down, it's like, hey, what is my run cost per client? So we have, we weren't really doing packages prior to my niche agencies. We were basically like just ballparking it. And I think they can afford $2,500. Let's hit them with that. Right.
yeah,
So it was like, when you sit down and really figure out your run rate and what it costs for a client, I realized very quickly that we lose money on anyone below $1,000. Like you're not making anything by the time you pay commissions and this, that. And so it's like, well, that was an eye opener. But going back to my experience where, we do a lot of financial counseling with clients too, when they're like, oh, I can't afford that. I'm like, hey, let me show you how you can. If I get you this many more clients per month, if I get you this many more gutter jobs, if I got you 3 brand new doors this month, if I got you, and we know the ROI, like I know it, and that's our sales pitch. I mean, I know these numbers at the back of my hand. I know
right.
what a repair costs in different parts of the country. I know what a door costs. So I
Yep.
can speak their terms. I've been in the field. I've done ride-alongs with guys, but I've also have a little, handy background doing blue collar stuff. And I got a ton of tools. I don't like paying other people to do things I can do. At
Yeah.
least and so I know, so you're like, hey, you think you can't afford me, but you actually can't afford not to hire. What is your plan for getting new customers? Like you posting again on Facebook, asking for
Yeah.
business on the door, that
Yep.
doesn't cut it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like there's a reason why you are talking to me is because like you are having a problem with like with acquisition, whether it's you do it yourself or you're working with another agency, that kind of stuff. Like same thing now with me on the talent view side of things and doing like the talent acquisition for agencies. Like I had a call with a guy earlier. I have a call after this podcast. And like I know these people are wanting to talk with me because they're having troubles in their agency, whether it's operations, whether it's they, have current team members that like we have one agency that's a partner of ours who like because they're already engaged in us and everything like that, they're like one of their lead, I think, graphic designers quit. And so like they're like, we need a graphic designer ASAP. It's like, got it. Like we got you. And so like a lot of these people don't like you, and it's more so not so like for me with the agency, it's hard for me because like marketing agencies know the marketing tactics, right? So like it's versus sometimes some of these blue collar home service people don't necessarily know. They're great at their trade. They don't necessarily know much about marketing, all that stuff. And so for you, like in your case, like, yeah, they're on that call because they have a problem with acquisition and they're tired of the Facebook groups, the people who reach out and want a quote, and then they're going to kick the can down the road for 6 months because they can't afford it, all that stuff. Like it's just so you're right. Like those are the people who like, they absolutely need 100% what you
You know,
guys have.
and I'm a big believer in a one call close. I really don't, if I got you on the phone, we're closing. We're going to do the deal. I'm not calling you back for a strategy call, unless it's a bigger client or it necessitates that. But for the most part, like with gutters and garage, if a guy's a smaller company, 1-2 truck, your numbers, how this works. And they need just a little bit enticement. What good is it going to be getting off the phone? Hey, let me send you some garbage report, or let me come back and have another conversation. Like the guy is on the job site, he doesn't have time for you anyhow. And most of these guys are ready to pull the trigger if you
Mm-hmm.
pick the right program,
Yeah.
So that's why we're always leading with, hey, listen. And there's a real estate dude. We do lots of cold calling and cold email, which is still fantastic. So we'll buy a lot of stuff from Coldlytics, but we'll just use Outscraper. And I'm teaching, my oldest son works with me. So I've been
Okay.
making him
That's awesome.
calling. Like I'm teaching him to hit the phones and stuff. And
Yeah.
one of the lines that we're using is like the "Would you hate me?" It's like, "Hey, Brad, what's up? I know you hate getting these calls, probably as much as I'm making them. But would you hate me if I ask you for 30 seconds? I mean, has anyone said to you, I found you on ChatGTP yet?" Because that's our big push is the AI SEO. And that's a great door opener, and then you get them on the phone and they're like, "Yeah, no, I heard about this." And when people are like, "No, I heard about AI SEO. I heard about getting found on that." And you're the first person to really talk to them, they're ready to sign up.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it's funny. We use what converts for like call tracking, and like we'd go through and look at them, and like anybody who was like cold calling as an agency, we'd mark that number as like spam, so it wouldn't go through again. But then obviously you use like called dialers like Kixie and all stuff. It changes the number each time. But it was kind of funny. We'd go and like market a spam, like, yep, our clients don't need those calls. Our clients don't need those calls. But you're right. Like it is the cold calling, cold cold emailing, cold DMing game is worth it. It's just a numbers game. You have to have the right approach. Like we've been testing out like cold DM on LinkedIn as an
Yeah.
example. And at first I was like, this ain't working, this ain't working, this ain't working. And then also like we got one lead booked and now we got a second person who we're about to begin talking with. So now I'm beginning to see a lot of that go through on, and again, I'm now working with agency owners who are used to the cold DMing and everything like that. And so a lot of people will dog, even myself, like at one point was dogging on like the cold calling game. I'm like, this doesn't work. There's no way. I went through 3 people who I had cold calling before I finally decided like, yeah, this isn't going to work. And then finally this year, I'm like, let's not do cold calling, but let's try like the cold appointment setting from like DMs and everything like that. And we're beginning to see traction and everything like that. I'm like, okay, let's
It's
perfect
all in the
this.
script. Yeah. It's all in your script and it's all in the email. It's funny. You made a joke about, AI with your intro. Dude,
Mhm.
you and I, I'm sure get tons of spam email for SEO and stuff. These emails are horrible. They are so horrible, but you have the greatest tool in the world for copywriting called Claude and ChatGTP.
Mhm.
And what we found is if you write the better email, and it's not a quick process, but if you write that better email sequence and you really just can strike that nerve, you can get people to respond via email. And I think really a lot of guys are using the AI not to its fullest potential when you're writing a cold emails. Like, you got to keep asking it, hey, is this good? Hey, think this way. This guy's on a ladder with a drill in his hand and he's checking his email at the same time. What would make him put the drill down? What would make him get off the ladder and read my email? What is so important to stop him in his track? And the other thing that we love with our prompts is I want to write an email that at the end of it, this guy says, I have to call Blair. If I don't, I'm an
Yeah.
idiot. Like, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. You'd be amazed at the
Yeah.
scripts and the emails that this stuff will write.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like I even think like you're talking like a perfect subject line, be like, John, don't fall off the ladder or something like that. Like he's on a ladder looking at it like, the hell is this email? And opens it up and it's, obviously cold email. But it's like we even use bots in ChatGPT for like my personal branding content. You and I are friends on Facebook, so I'm sure you see my content and everything. And like
It's awesome.
we have a tool that like downloads all of my posts. It downloads how many reactions they got, how many comments they got, like all of that stuff. And we're constantly uploading those back to this bot in the back end of ChatGPT. So that way then when I go, hey, I want to post about this, it can give me a pretty damn good hook and a pretty good like flow on there. And then I'll go in and tweak it. Nope, I want to sound like this and that. And I'll like all of my posts are written by me with combination of prompting ChatGPT and like having it improve like the hook and all that stuff. And like I'm beginning to see a lot more progress out of it because again, we're uploading what's working. And so now it's constantly learning off my own content and what's getting the reaction, everything like that. So that's what a lot of people miss on like the cold DM, cold email side of things is like you find these emails that work. Eventually they won't work just because it works once or for a couple of weeks for clients doesn't mean it's always going to work. But then what works, upload it to a bot in ChatGPT and have it constantly fine tune itself to make sure that like you are getting the best output there in terms of like subject lines, call to actions, all
They
that.
respond or you get them on the phone. And that's where the real world experience of, hey, listen, sometimes I think I should have niched down to auto repair shops because I did work in one for so long. just I just know that that's a hard business. But just to tell guys like, hey man, no, I understand. Like I've been in a cabinet shop, I've been in auto repair, I worked in custom furniture shop. I get this, and you can just be honest with them and talk on that level. And I still take a lot of the calls and my problem in my agency is I'm still the main point of contact for a lot of this. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my neck. I really this year I've been delegating a lot more. But if you get these guys on the phone and have a real conversation, not even, we don't really pitch. It really is like trying to dig down to what's their problem and kind of fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for us with our growth has been, even if they say no before we let them off the phone, it's like, hey, well, maybe this is not a right fit right now, but who do you know? Do you have a friend? Do you know someone? You go to these gutter conferences, like who do you know that I could call right now because their website's
Mm-hmm.
jacked? Who do you know who's tired of paying Mr. Pipeline or some of these companies
Yeah.
right now that I could call? And you'd be surprised
Yeah.
how many times they give you a name and number.
Yeah, absolutely. So real quick, before we wrap up, you mentioned you've been trying to do a lot more like delegation and everything this year. Obviously, my business talent fee says it's what we're all about is delegation. What areas like have you began to delegate this year that you're like, I wish I would have done this like 5 years ago?
All of it. my problem is I come at that from a deep, hardcore underground SEO background, and that's hard to delegate. That is very hard to teach. That is very hard to outsource. Most of these guys with the outsourcing companies, there doesn't always work out. So to get my guys, to get my team, my niece, my son at a higher level for SEO, that's been the real challenge. So I've been writing a lot of like my own secret SOPs, and I'm like, okay, here's the checklist. And even this week, I mean, literally, I had client follow-up calls for like website edits, and I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm like,
Hmm.
this is crazy. And I told my son, I'm like, hey, just, you got to take this call. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm like, you'll figure it out. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? He's like, what do I say when they're like, ask where you are? Just say, you're the web guy. Oh, you just tell them
Yeah.
I can't make it. You're the one that's going to be, so that's been really great, is just offloading everything. Josh's book and kind of like the buy back your time, and anything I don't like doing, I'm not going to do it anymore
Yep.
as much as possible. Or
Yeah.
things that take me away from sales or thought content, and that I want to get off my plate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, even like for me, like with this podcast as an example, and you kind of saw it, like my EA has access to my messenger. So they like messaged you and like reached out, was like, hey, you fill out this form. And there was a mix up there and it happens. But then like
Oh
I
no, that's
show
no
up
problem.
and I show up and on my calendar is these notes for the podcast that I didn't generate. I go and record the intro. I got the questions and like I'm hoping it's all correct because you filled out the form, my EA prepped the notes, but then I hop off the call and like I don't do any of the post production things. They get it ready, they publish it to the platforms, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I love getting on and having conversations. I hate the nuances behind like having a podcast. And so I don't do those. And so that's what a lot of people like don't think about is like you can delegate off all the other things on there, even things like in your case with like meeting with clients and everything like that. Like, I don't know if it's a phone call or a Zoom call, you can have like a AI note taker on there, have the conversation, meet with the client, and then have an EA in the back end that has access to those notes. And they're the one that's then communicating with the web developer, the SEO person, like to make those changes and then replying back to the client either as themselves or as you saying, hey, just letting you know we got XYZ done. And what the client doesn't realize is you have an operations person in the back end who's like your second brain, like
Yeah.
handling all of that. And so
And
that's what a
one
lot of
of the
people
guys,
don't realize there.
you're right, definitely. One of the guys at the first intensive I went to, and I forget his name, but he has like the awesome gift boxes, and he does the like dirt podcast. He does all the excavation guys, and
Hmm.
terrible I forget his name right now because I follow him and everything. But he probably gave a lesson on how he does the initial onboarding call and hands it off and gets out of it. And I think that was $1 million advice right there. And that is one thing implemented is we all get on the call and very quickly I'm like, this person is in charge, and I try to get out of it and I
Hmm.
make them, and like that was probably one of the greatest pieces of advice this year for 2025.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like one of the things I've done with the talent fuse, and you learn from each business. So like I've learned now, like with it comes to like we have like I do a sales call and I try to do the one call close, and then we have an onboarding call. And I say Karen and my team are going to be on the onboarding call. I have an AI note taker on here. They're going to have access to all the notes. They're going to come to that call prepped with everything, recap on what you and I talked about. Nothing's going to fall through the cracks. Like it's all there. And Karen and team are going to take great care of you. And so like I've not had a single client with talent fees that I've had to onboard because I've always punted it to, hey, you're going to do this onboarding call with Karen and the team, and then they host the interviews and everything like that. And so like this week, we had 2 clients email her and like say they're wanting more VAs with us, which means they're upgrading their plan. It's like we had 2 upgrades happen this week and I wasn't involved in it at all. And they didn't even reach out to me for the upgrades. Right. And so I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing.
No, that
And
is the beauty. That's the goal. That's you.
yeah,
You hit it.
yeah, absolutely. Well, Blair, as we're wrapping up here, I always like asking this as think back to yourself of hitting rock bottom, with the incident with the mortgages and just, everything else, trying to, missing payroll, all that stuff. You can think back to like somebody who's going through that right now, of what you've gone through. What advice would you give to that individual?
Man, I think a lot of times when people find themselves in these just crushing situations, they can't see the end. It seems like there is no way out. It seems like how do I get from point A to point B? How do I catch up on my bills? How do I do all this? And the advice here is it does not happen overnight, and it takes sometimes a very long time. But you will wake up one day and almost chuckle to yourself that even happened. Just one foot in front of the other, do the next right thing. That's all you can do. Don't worry about yesterday. Just do the next right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You're definitely right on that. I'm going through some of that right now where I'm looking back and I'm like, why was I even worried about that? Like, not a big
Yeah.
deal at all. So, well, Blair, thanks again for hopping on. Those who are listening, please don't forget to like and subscribe and also share this episode online so we can get what Blair is doing with his Garage Door SEO company out to other garage door SEO owners so they can level up their online presence online. And also so we can help other agency owners or founders who have gone through what Blair's gone through and really get some key advice there. But until next time, this is your Unfair Advantage.
All right. Thanks a lot.